Hi, I'm Kerry, EDU616, and my number is 2962 1333. I'm talking about an incident from my past where I had a cross-cultural encounter with a old Aboriginal man. 35 years ago, I was a social welfare officer, and my job was to evict him from the home that he had built himself at a rubbish tip in a southwestern WA town, wheatbelt town. I thought this would be too easy. I represented the government, the law. I had power and authority, shades of Hofstede's power distance concepts and his cultural distance theories. So I thought, how was it when I went home that he was the one to stay at the tip and I was the one to resign my position? Initially, he acted up to my stereotypical expectation. He was an old drunken Aboriginal living at the tip. He acted belligerently toward me, urinating behind the humpy where I could hear him and speaking roughly. Yet, because I was being paid, I ignored his obvious desire to get rid of me. He had a stereotypical view of me as well. I was a young, white female, a zealous do-gooder, determined to wreck his way of life and make him into a white man living in a white man's house. Because I stayed and sat by the fire, not taking offence at his show of aggression, not making eye contact and sitting lower than him, I was showing him respect. And I stepped out of his image of me and became a person that he had to speak to. These behaviours are identified in Ward et al.'s theories of codes of communication in cultural learning theories. Because I stayed and we negotiated his position together, I came to see him as an individual as well, a human being like myself. My background of abuse and neglect meant I saw Tommy as similar and not as other. Turner would say I shifted from my social identity, my group identity as defined by my gender, position, nationality, religion and so on, to my personal identity, worked out by my personal interests, my what I thought and valued as an individual privately. I socially identified on a large scale as a white, dominant government employee, a role I was given from birth. Tommy and I belonged to different social groups, but we had shared in values. I didn't feel I had the right to walk into his home and tell him what to do. As a person, he was worthy of dignity and the right to his own choices. His needs were being met according to Maslow's hierarchy, but my job required that I interfere in his life. Holliday's discussion of large culture, small culture fits here. Theoretically, I saw the rightness of my position centred in the large culture of English-speaking Western hegemonic institutions. Holliday expresses the idea of a middle culture, formed for a long or short time in allowing dealing between two parties. In seeking understanding, I became aware of my own small cultural value of not wanting to dominate for financial gain. Sitting by the fire in companionable silence, we formed our own middle culture for a short time. Looking back, I think I experienced an identity crisis. I was on his territory and out of place, essentially a foreigner. My public self came into conflict with my private self in this interview, and I chose to stay true to what I thought I was, rather than what my dominant cultural role prescribed me to be. Becker's idea of being true, of having a true self as a way of social adjustment through time, plays out here. Thank you for listening to me.